Hello and welcome to Better Work Days, a show dedicated to helping everyday professionals create better days at work. I'm your host, Andy Morrison from Real Custom Training, where we design and deliver professional development workshops that are relevant, engaging, actionable, and lasting. Each week on Better Work Days, we'll be taking a look at a specific concept, skill, or story that we use in our workshops. We'll make sure that they're easy to understand, fun to learn about, and most importantly, that they can be applied immediately in the workplace as soon as you finish the episode. Thank you for joining us. It's time for Better Work Days from Real Custom Training. Hey everybody, welcome back to Better Work Days. I am your host, Andy Morrison, and this week, one of the things I'm working on is prep for an upcoming workshop that we're going to be running here in Putnam. It's part of our Advanced Supervisory Skills series, and the workshop's called Running Meetings That Matter. So that's going to be held May 22nd and 29th from 9 to 12 here in our Putnam, Connecticut Training Center. And I love this workshop because when I started Real Custom Training, my unofficial mission statement has been no more bad bosses, no more bad meetings. Because in my experience, the things that most people run into that really cause them a lot of issues in the workplace, bad bosses and bad meetings. So if we can do our part to help have fewer bad bosses and fewer bad meetings in the world, then we'll have done a pretty good thing. So Running Meetings That Matter is coming up. So I thought it'd be a good chance to showcase one of the many things that we cover in this workshop. And so the thing we're going to cover today, 3 steps to better meetings with beans. And if you're wondering what the heck beans are, I'm going to tell you. So here's 3 steps you can take to improve the meetings that you're running at work. Now, beans, what the heck are they? Behavior enablers, artifacts, and nudges. That's what we mean when we're talking about beans. Behavior enablers are any type of aid that you can provide your employees that will help them follow a desired behavior. So things like checklists, handouts, video guides, those are good examples of behavior enablers, things that directly help people do something that you really want and need them to be doing. And then the A and the N in beans, artifacts and nudges. These are more indirect forms of encouragement of the desired behavior. So these can be physical and digital reminders, leaderboards, stories of success, the kinds of things that indirectly encourage people to perform the behavior that you want and need them to perform. So that's what we're talking about when we're talking about beans. And we use this in the Running Meetings That Matters workshop because beans can give people a framework to take a look at their group's meeting behaviors, what's not working, identify what would work better, and then give them some ideas, get them going on how to actually implement that behavior. So here's the 3 steps, okay? Step number 1, define the desired behavior. So I'll give you a scenario that came up with one of our clients, and we put them through these 3 steps and came up with some good solutions for them. So the scenario for them was that they were holding a lot of virtual meetings, like all of us have been since COVID. And they were starting to find that engagement was down during the meetings. They said it was harder to get people engaged and participating and focused in their virtual meeting settings than it was in their in-person meeting settings, which is a common challenge of virtual meetings. So we walked them through these steps. We said, step 1, let's define the desired behavior. And the framework you can use for that is you're going to come up with a statement. Okay. And the beginning of your statement is going to have your desired behavior. So you can prompt yourself, and you should do this with your team. Let me stress that. If you're the one leading the meetings with your team, don't go through this process in your boss bubble. Bring this process to the table with your team. Give them a say in it. You will get better results anytime you can involve the team in these type of norm forming of coming up with the ways the team is going to operate. Anytime you can get the team involved in that process, they're going to have more buy-in. You're going to have better results of them actually doing the things you want them to do. So get the team around the table and start with the prompt of, it would be great if we ... Then have your team fill in the blanks. What's going on in the meetings? What would it be great if we did differently? And in the case of the client that we ran this through with, they came up with the statement, it would be great if we were all present and engaged during virtual meetings. So there you go. That one step helped them define the desired behavior, which is being present and engaged during virtual meetings. Step 2, identifying behavioral blockers. You want to use a but instead we statement to identify the things that your team's doing instead of the desired behavior. So in the case of our client, it went something like this. It would be great if we were all present and engaged during virtual meetings, but instead we get distracted and start to multitask. So again, your team's going to come up with specific ways to fill in the blanks here. But for this team that we worked with, they identified the behavioral blocker as getting distracted and starting to multitask. Now, a couple notes on coming up with your but instead we statement. You want to be as specific as possible, okay? In fact, this statement, if I were to rework this with that team, I would encourage them in retrospect. We could even get a little more specific here. What's distracting them? What's causing them to multitask, okay? And in the conversation we had with them, it was revealed that, well, they're getting about, 40 emails an hour, okay? And their inbox alert is flashing during their virtual meetings. They're getting interrupted. They're getting hit with Teams chats. They're getting hit with Slack chats. They're getting asked to put out fires that maybe aren't even really fires and don't really need to be pulling their attention from the meeting, but they've got people coming at them from all directions. So we could have gotten a little more specific there. We could have said we're getting distracted by emails and interruptions and starting to multitask on requests that are coming in during the meeting. The second piece of advice here is make sure you always describe actions and not feelings. So by that, I mean saying we get distracted and start to multitask. That's an action-oriented description. Getting distracted, starting to multitask. It's not describing feelings. It's not saying we could care less about what each of us is saying, or oh, we don't really care about the team, so we're not really paying attention. You don't want to get into feelings like that. This is true for this process. This is true anytime you're talking to someone about performance or conflict resolution. Always, as much as you can, try to describe somebody's actions instead of feelings. So in this case, we get distracted and we start to multitask. That's the action that they're taking that you want to fix. And then try to go beyond the obvious. Think of the why behind the what. And that's a little bit of what I was saying before. Try to get to the bottom of it with your team as to why this behavior is occurring. In the case of the client I mentioned, we've discovered, well, it's because they're getting bombarded with emails. They're getting bombarded with team messages. People are knocking on their doors. They don't realize they're in a meeting and they're asking them, coming in and interrupting. So getting to that why is a key part of being able to figure out exactly what's going on and why it's happening. And then your third step can be to complete the statement and build your team's bean, okay? You're going to come up with a bean to try to help the team. So here you can wrap up your statement with a so we should prompt. This is a so we should statement that'll create a bean that encourages the desired behavior and helps overcome the identified behavior blocker. So the stuff you identified in step 2, step 3 is going to be some ideas of how your team can overcome those things you identified in step 2. So step 3, I'll finish this statement for you that we came up with our client. It'd be great if we were all present and engaged during virtual meetings, but instead we get distracted and we start to multitask. So we should adopt an opening ritual in which we take a moment to hang a do not disturb sign on our doors, close all other computer programs, put away our phones, and ensure that our cameras and microphones are working. For this team, they felt that if they all could make a commitment to doing those things at the start of each of their meetings, that it would help them be more present and more engaged. It would help with that desired behavior. So within that, you can see that there's a few behavioral enablers, all right? The signs on the doors, closing all the programs, putting the phones away, those are direct actions that are going to enable the behavior that you're looking for. Ensuring cameras and microphones are working. You want people engaged in a virtual meeting. I know sometimes when you're working from home, maybe you don't want to be on camera, but the science behind it all says you're more engaged if you're on camera. It's always going to be second best to in person. I think that's just the fact. That's just the reality of the situation. In-person meetings are always going to be better for bonding and team building, but the closest you can get to that online is through using webcams and microphones. So making sure cameras and microphones are working is one way to help people get engaged and be more present during their virtual meetings. So those are the 3 steps we took with the client, and they came up with this statement. And in coming up with the statement, came up with a bean, a behavioral enabler, some artifacts, and some nudges that they could use to help their team be more present and more engaged during their own virtual meeting. So I would encourage you, try out these 3 steps with your team. Okay, you can go back to this and listen again, the prompts you're going to use. It would be great if we at ... but instead we get ... so we should ... Those are the 3 prompts you're going to use to come up with your statement, and it's going to help your team identify a desired behavior, behavioral blockers, and then some beans that'll help them perform the desired behavior more. And keep in mind the example that we just gave, some of the behavior enablers that are there. It could also include training. I say this a lot given the nature of what I do professionally, but we oftentimes in the workplace get asked to do things that we maybe just simply don't know how to do, or we don't know how to do in the best possible way. Running meetings is certainly one of those things. In school, what do they have us do in college and grad school? Lots of group projects, right? That's essentially running meetings and running a little team. They have you do that, but they don't ever really train you on how to do it properly. It's almost like tossing everyone a bunch of instruments and saying, go play a song together. Well, do they actually know how to play those instruments? They could all pick up those instruments and make some noise, maybe come up with something that resembles a song, but they may need some training. So don't take for granted when you're asking your team to do things that they may need some training. If you're asking them to use a new software for their virtual meetings, get them training on the software. If your managers are struggling with their meetings, get them some training on how to run effective meetings. Help them out. Give them the skills that they need to do the things you want them to do. The equipment itself is important, all right? If you're asking people to be more present and engaged in virtual meetings, make sure the stuff they have to hold those virtual meetings is actually working. Agendas. Can't stress this enough. It's one of the keystones of the Running Meetings That Matters workshop. Have your agendas and share them before the meeting. Especially if you want people to be present and engaged in a meeting, then give them a heads up well before that meeting starts as to what the meeting's going to be about, what the objectives are, and give them some things to think about so that they can bring something to the table ahead of time. Get them the agendas ahead of time. We mentioned the ritual that our client came up with of putting up the do not disturb sign, closing all their programs, et cetera, et cetera. A checklist of that ritual, a little sticky note with the checklist on it that they can put on their computer screen and everyone can, go through it, make sure they're doing it before the meetings. That's a great example of a behavior enabler, a good old fashioned checklist. All right. It's a digital age, but that type of analog stuff is still very powerful. And strategic scheduling. Okay. Maybe your people are getting bombarded with requests and emails and messages, and they're multitasking during your meetings because you keep scheduling this standing meeting a day or two before a monthly deadline that your team always has. So maybe there's things that you can do with the schedule that could also serve as a behavior enabler. Make sure you're scheduling the meeting at the most opportune time. And then artifacts in the scenario we use, the do not disturb sign. Print it up for them. Give it to them. Give them the nail to put in the door to put it up with, or the stickies for it. That's a good example of an artifact, the sign itself. Sharing articles with the team about other best practices for being engaged and being present during virtual meetings. Those are examples of artifacts, some indirect ways you can encourage the behavior. And then for nudges, digital reminders about the meeting. Okay, include your ritual at the top of the meeting agenda. Again, sort of like the checklist, so that it's front of mind for everybody and so that they know it's an expectation that needs to be followed. It's not just something you cooked up in a brainstorming session that's going to be forgotten about and never brought up again. It's an expectation moving forward. Keeping it front and center reinforces that. Shared success stories at larger meetings. If your department's in a meeting with other departments and you're the boss, tell everybody how well this ritual, this bean you came up with is helping your team to have more productive and engaged meetings online. 1, makes you look good, makes your department looks good. 2, it can help other people in your organization adopt that best practice. And 3, anytime folks get publicly recognized like that, it's only going to reinforce that desired behavior even more. And then lastly, use appreciative inquiry with your team. a few months after you start the ritual, remind them, hey, we want to try this out. How's it going? Is it working? Do we feel more productive? What's going well? What can we do better next time? That can also be a way to give people a nudge so that they continue to perform that desired behavior. So those are your 3 steps to better meetings with Beans. That's just one small piece of advice we have for how to run better meetings. And if you're interested in a deeper dive into running meetings that matter, I highly encourage you check out our upcoming workshop here in Putnam, May 22nd and 29th. That's Wednesdays, 9 a.m. to 12 p.m. Just come spend 2 Wednesday mornings with us, and I promise you'll be running faster, more productive, more engaging meetings if you come and take this workshop. And the people who attend your meetings are going to love you because they're going to know you're doing your best not to waste their time in meetings they don't need to be in. And you're making sure when they are in a meeting that they need to be in, that you're running the most productive meeting possible and you're getting them out of that meeting as quickly as you can while still meeting the objectives. So you can go to realcustomtraining.com to learn more about that workshop. As always, if you're outside of the Northeastern Connecticut region and our in-person programming just isn't feasible for you, give us a ring. Contact information's on the website. Email, call, get in touch with us. We can run all of these programs online as well. We can even come to your company and run it on site to make it even more convenient for you. Like and subscribe on YouTube if you haven't already. I heard from a few more clients that said every episode that comes out, their HR department's dispersing it through the organization, which is music to my ears. I absolutely loved hearing that. That's what we want this to be, a resource for companies. So if you haven't shared it with any coworkers yet, please do so. You can follow us on LinkedIn, where you can get Better Workdays Live. You can follow us on Facebook, where you can also get Better Workdays Live. And we will be back next week. Thank you for listening and thank you for watching.